The night she packed her suitcase, it wasn't anger that stayed with me, it was the quiet. The way she folded her blouses with the same care she once used on our shared laundry, as if the years between us had already been archived and labeled. I stood in the doorway holding a mug that had gone cold, watching a life I thought was solid become procedural. I remember thinking that this must be what endings look like when they finally tell the truth. No shouting, no accusations, just the sound of zippers and the hum of a city that doesn't notice what it's taking from you. There was a moment, small, almost unimportant, when she looked up at me and smiled politely. Not the smile that knew my jokes or waited for my words. A professional smile, efficient, distant. In that instant, I understood something I had been avoiding for years. The loss hadn't happened tonight. Tonight was only the paperwork. The loss had been happening slowly, in daylight, in meetings and commutes and conversations we postponed until they no longer mattered. Long after she left, I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to remember when I stopped being someone she looked at with curiosity, when admiration turned into assessment, when partnership became comparison. I had answers then, too many, too late, and they all pointed to the same truth. Her promotion didn't change her. It revealed what I had refused to see in myself. We met before either of us knew what titles would do to our names. She was working the front desk at a small firm downtown, hair pulled back too tightly, correcting the spelling of clients' names with quiet confidence. I was in logistics at a manufacturing plant, a job that paid the bills and asked little else. We bonded over routine coffee breaks that aligned, the predictability of Fridays, the relief of clocks that agreed with us. She liked that I listened. I liked that she noticed. Our early years were built on practical affection. We learned how to share space before we learned how to share ambition. On weekends, we cleaned together, the radio low, our movements synchronized. We spoke about the future in careful terms: saving, stability, maybe a house with a small yard. She mentioned school sometimes, a certification, a step forward. I nodded, proud, supportive in theory. In practice, I believed time would slow her down. It always had. When she enrolled in night classes, I adjusted dinner schedules and told myself it was temporary. I admired her discipline from a distance, the way she studied at the table after long days. I brought her tea. I made jokes about her becoming my boss one day. The jokes landed then. She laughed. We were still on the same side of the table. The promotion came quietly. An email, a handshake. A new title that sounded heavier than it was. She didn't celebrate the way movies say people do. She updated her calendar, bought a blazer that fit better, and started leaving the house 10 minutes earlier. I congratulated her and meant it. But something inside me tightened. Not jealousy, exactly more like displacement. A subtle fear that the order of things had shifted without asking my permission. Her days grew denser. Meetings ran late. She spoke in acronyms at dinner, apologized for checking her phone. I told her it was fine, that I understood. I wanted to be easy to live with. But ease became silence. Silence became habit. When she came home tired, I avoided adding weight. When I was tired, I swallowed it. We were considerate in ways that slowly erased us. At work, nothing changed for me. The plant ran as it always had. The same problems, the same fixes. My supervisor retired, replaced by someone younger who spoke about scaling. I felt old without aging. At home, she grew sharper, more precise. She organized our finances, suggested new savings plans. I agreed. I started to feel like a junior partner in my own life. Friends noticed before I did. Comments slipped out at dinners, how impressive she was, how lucky I must feel. I smiled. I felt proud. I also felt reduced. I didn't tell her that. I didn't tell anyone. I told myself this was what support looked like. She didn't become cruel. That's the lie people tell themselves to simplify things. She became efficient. She asked clearer questions. She expected follow-through. When I forgot things, appointments, small promises, she didn't scold. She corrected. Each correction landed like a small evaluation. I began to brace for conversations. One evening, she suggested we set goals together. The word together felt aspirational, not descriptive. She spoke about growth, about aligning timelines. I nodded, contributed little. I had none to offer. My ambition had been a placeholder, and now it was being audited. I started staying late at work, not because I was needed, but because it delayed the feeling that waited at home, the feeling of being observed. She noticed, of course. She always noticed. She asked if I was okay. I said yes. The lie was smooth by then. We slept back to back more often. Not angrily, just tired. On weekends, she caught up on reading, professional articles highlighted and bookmarked. I watched television, told myself rest was earned. The gap widened without noise. The second promotion was louder. A team, authority, a salary that forced conversations we hadn't rehearsed. She wanted to move closer to downtown. I resisted, citing costs, commute, comfort. We negotiated like colleagues. Compromise felt like defeat. I began to measure myself against her world and found no translation. My jokes didn't land anymore. My stories felt dated. When I spoke about work, she listened politely, then offered solutions I hadn't asked for. I mistook competence for condescension and resented her for it. We argued once. Properly. It surprised us both. I accused her of changing. She asked me how. I had no answer that didn't indict me. The argument ended not with resolution but with fatigue. After that, we became careful. Careful is dangerous. It removes friction, and friction is how people know they're still touching. She stopped asking me about my day. I stopped volunteering. We shared logistics, groceries, bills, calendars like a well-run project. Love became assumed. Assumption became neglect. I told myself it would level out. Promotions plateau. Energy fades. I waited for her to come back to me, not realizing she hadn't left. I was the one standing still, expecting the world to circle back. By the time I noticed the distance had become habit, it already had a history. We spoke kindly. We smiled for photos. We avoided the mirror of each other's eyes. The night she packed, I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I watched. Somewhere inside, a part of me recognized the professionalism of the moment. The decision had been made earlier. Tonight was just execution. She paused at the door, thanked me for understanding. Understanding. The word sat between us like an invoice. After she left, I cleaned the kitchen. Old reflex. I threw out expired things. I noticed how much space her absence created, how loud the apartment felt. I slept alone and dreamed of meetings I couldn't attend. In the morning, I went to work. The plant smelled the same. The machines hummed. No one asked about my night. I realized then how much of my identity had been borrowed from proximity. Without her, I was unchanged, and that terrified me. Days passed. Then weeks. We handled paperwork with civility. Friends chose sides by silence. I told myself stories about timing, about incompatibility. They were incomplete. One evening, I found a notebook she'd left behind. Old notes from her first classes. Doubt scribbled in margins. Questions. Fear. I had been there then, present but passive. Supportive but still, she had moved anyway. I understood finally that promotions don't change how someone looks at you. They change how clearly you're seen. Part 2. I moved to a smaller place near the river, a decision made without negotiation. The windows rattled when trains passed, reminding me that motion existed. I began cooking for one, learning portion sizes I had never mastered. The quiet was different here, not accusatory, just factual. At work, I asked for more responsibility. It felt strange, like speaking a language I'd only heard. My supervisor nodded, surprised but accommodating. The tasks were heavier, so was the satisfaction. I wondered how long I'd been waiting for permission that was never required. We spoke occasionally, logistics, closure disguised as courtesy. She sounded well, focused. I sounded steady, practiced. We avoided memory. One afternoon, months later, I ran into her downtown. She looked composed, familiar in a way that no longer belonged to me. We exchanged updates like former colleagues. When she smiled, it was still professional. It didn't hurt the way I expected. It clarified. Walking home, I replayed the years not with bitterness but with accuracy. I saw myself choosing comfort over growth, silence over risk. I saw her choosing movement, not away from me, but toward herself. I began therapy, a word I had avoided like a diagnosis. It was mostly listening at first, then honesty. I learned how often I had equated stability with virtue, how fear had dressed itself as reason, how love without attention becomes a contract no one remembers signing. Time did what time does. It dulled edges. It did not erase responsibility. I dated briefly, carefully. I learned how to ask questions and sit with answers. I learned how to be seen without shrinking. Years later, I received a card from her. A simple note. She was moving again. Another role, another city. She wished me well. I wished her the same. The exchange felt complete. On the anniversary of our separation, I walked by the river and watched the water move without apology. I thought about the night she packed, the smile, the zipper. I thought about the man in the doorway holding a cold mug, waiting for the world to pause. It never does. What changes isn't how someone looks at you when they grow. It's whether you grow enough to meet their eyes. I stood there until the light faded, not waiting for anything, just present. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough.